Hello everyone. Welcome to Diving Deep. I am your host, Pastor Michael GANNAWAY. So good that you've joined us today in our continuing study in the book of Numbers. Okay. When we last left off, we were in chapter 15. We were going over the drink offerings, and the laws in regards to that. We shall now move to the laws concerning unintentional sin, starting in verse 22. Okay. If you sin unintentionally and do not observe all these commandments, which the Lord has spoken to Moses, all that the Lord has commanded you by the hand of Moses, from the day the Lord gave commandment and onward throughout your generations, then it will be, if it is unintentionally committed, without the knowledge of the congregation, that the whole congregation shall offer one young bull as a burnt offering, as a sweet aroma to the Lord, with its grain offering and its drink offering, according to the ordinance, and one kid of the goats as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the whole congregation, and it shall be forgiven them, for it was unintentional. They shall bring their offering, an offering made by fire, to the Lord, and their sin offering before the Lord for the unintended sin. It shall be forgiven the whole congregation of the children of Israel, and the stranger who dwells among them, because all the people did it unintentionally. Okay. Let's go back a bit. It says if you sin unintentionally. So if someone sins unintentionally, did you notice something? It's not the one person that has to make an offering to God. It's the whole congregation. And it specifically says the unintentional sin will be forgiven them. Not him, not her, but them. So if one in the congregation unintentionally sins, it affects everybody. That's how it was. I mean, you are guilty by association according to God. This is why we have to choose the company we keep very, very carefully. Because if we hang around folks that just want to pursue a life of sin, it has an effect on you, a negative effect. Therefore, the ones who you're closest to, they got to be, at the very least, trying to live the right way, trying to live godly. Otherwise, you may be found guilty of association. Okay. 27. And if a person sins unintentionally, then he shall bring a female goat in its first year as a sin offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the person who sins unintentionally, when he sins unintentionally before the Lord, to make atonement for him, it shall be forgiven him. You shall have one law for him who sins unintentionally, for him who is native born among the children of Israel, and for the stranger who dwells among them. So, there is atonement for not just the Jew, not just the Hebrew, but also for the stranger, the Gentile. And that just shows that forgiveness for both Jew and Gentiles has always been the desire of God. And ultimately, that offering for everyone was fulfilled in the death and resurrection of Jesus Messiah. All right. Now, Now we move on to the law concerning presumptuous sin. Now, this is much different than unintentional sin, because this is willful sin, doing it with a full knowledge that God dislikes it, and you're just doing it anyway, as a means of shaking your fist at him in rebellion. Let's see how God deals with this. But the person who does anything presumptuously, whether he is a native born or a stranger, no respecter of persons there, that one brings reproach on the Lord, and he shall be cut off from among his people, because he has despised the word of the Lord and has broken his commandment. That person shall be completely cut off. His guilt shall be upon him. So, cut off, as in separated. Now, what is hell? It's eternal separation from God, and it's being cut off, and that is what the path of presumptuous, willful, rebellious sin is going to lead to. There are those who want to preach, the grace messages where you're free to live however, and you'll be saved by grace. Listen, anybody who seriously believes in that does not love God. That person is despising the word of the Lord. Despising his commands, because he flat out doesn't want to do them, and he willingly admits it. And if you think in the end that grace is going to save you, on Judgment Day, you just might find yourself cut off and have to bear the sin yourself, as opposed to Jesus bearing it for you. Take that to heart. All right. The penalty for violating the Sabbath, verse 32. Now, while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man gathering sticks on the Sabbath day. And those who found him gathering sticks brought him to Moses and Aaron and to all the congregation. They put him under guard, because it had not been explained what should be done to him. Then the Lord said to Moses, "The man must surely be put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones outside the camp." So as the Lord commanded Moses, all the congregation brought him outside the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died. Well, seems a bit extreme just for picking up sticks, but I think this had a lot more to do with the motivation. This quite possibly could have been a man doing it presumptuously, meaning he knew he wasn't supposed to do it, but he just did it anyway. And that kind of rebellion had to be quashed. It's just not something that God can let slide. Because if he doesn't take a strong approach, to dealing with this, then it's just giving permission for everybody to do the same with everything else. So, we just got to remember, these things that we do that we know are wrong. We may not, if we're not at the very least feeling any kind of conviction, it's a bad sign. It could be a sign of your conscience being seared over. And if you're not feeling any kind of conviction, you could be on your way of getting cut off. And that's just my opinion. But when it comes to the holy things of God and honoring His Word and loving His Word and loving everything about Him, best to err on the side of caution. I think so, anyway. Okay. Tassels on garments. Verse 37. Again the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel. Tell them to make tassels on the corners of their garments throughout their generations, and to put a blue thread in the tassels of the corners. And you shall have the tassel, that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, that you may not follow the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined, and that you may remember to do all my commandments, and be holy for your God. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. Okay. So, the purpose of the tassels, particularly with a blue thread in the ones in the corners, it's to remember the commandments of the Lord. It's a reminder that you remember to do all my commandments. Now, this may seem rather insignificant, but when you look broader, and you'll discover that there is this carries a far more implications than you might realize. All right, let's look at this one verse in particular, verse 39, where you may not follow the harlotry to which your own heart and your own eyes are inclined. Okay, the key word there is harlotry. Okay, if you were to look in the book of Exodus, in chapter 26, you'll read how the curtains of the tabernacle are to contain fine linen and scarlet, purple, and blue threads. That's how they're sewn together. And then in Exodus 28, the priestly garments, you'll find scarlet, blue, and purple threads, are used to sew those garments together. Okay, 3 colors: purple, scarlet, and blue. Now, fast forward to Revelation 19, where it talks about the great prostitute. The great prostitute is adorned in purple and scarlet. There is no mention of blue in the harlot. No mention. And I find it interesting that the blue thread in the tassels was to serve as a reminder to follow the commandments of God and not follow the harlotry of your heart. Yeah. Without the commandments of God, without the law of God, without the law explaining to us the standard that God has, we just would give in to the harlotry that is in us. I mean, the harlot, the great prostitute, by not wearing blue, she is lawless. Yeah. The Bible is incredible. How so many details tie it all together, making it one book. And there are just no insignificant details. None. You got to think, why is this here? Why is this being mentioned? And if you're willing to dive deep, you can find those answers. It's incredible. Okay. Now we move to chapter 16. The rebellion against Moses and Aaron. Now Korah, the son of Ishar, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, with Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliah, and On, the son of Peleth, sons of Reuben took men, and they rose up before Moses with some of the children of Israel, 250 leaders of the congregation, representatives of the congregation, men of renown. They gathered together against Moses and Aaron, and to them they say, "You take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord?" So, Korah and this congregation of his, they are challenging the authority of Moses. Very similar to the rebellion that Miriam and Aaron led. You know, they say, "Doesn't God talk to us too?" Challenging the authority that God gave to Moses. You know, as one teacher pointed out to me, you know, this isn't really a rebellion against Moses. It's really a rebellion against God, because it is God that put Moses where he is. And gave him that authority. So ultimately, this is rebellion against God. Now, you think that Korah would have learned from Miriam and Aaron, but apparently he did not. And I believe that as a result, God will be less inclined to show Korah and this congregation the mercy that he was willing to show Miriam, where she was cut off from the camp for 7 days with leprosy and then allowed to rejoin. All right. Okay, verse 4. So when Moses heard it, he fell on his face, and he spoke to Korah and all his company, saying, "Tomorrow morning the Lord will show us who is his and who is holy, and will cause him to come near to him. That one whom he chooses, he will cause to come near to him. Do this. Take censers, Korah, and all your company, put fire in them, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man whom the Lord chooses is the Holy One. You take too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levi." Yeah. I mean, Korah, he's a Levite. You know, the Levites have been set apart for God himself. You know, the Levites, you know, do the work of the tabernacle. But apparently, perhaps, that position went to Korah's head, and he and all these others think they're all that. But it was God himself who put Korah in that position, not by anything that Korah had done, or the rest of them. You know, it was by his divine choice. That's it. Korah had nothing to do with it, or the rest of them. But they apparently think they had everything to do with it. Okay. Moving on. Verse 8. Then Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi, it is a small thing to you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to himself, to do the work of the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to serve them, and that he has brought you near to himself, you and all your brethren, the sons of Levi, with you. And you are seeking the priesthood also? Therefore you and all your company are gathered together against the Lord." Now there it is. Not against Moses, but against the Lord. "And what is Aaron that you complain against him?" And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram and the sons of Eliab. But they said, "We will not come up. It is a small thing that you have brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you should keep acting like a prince over us. Did you catch this? I mean, they're saying to Moab, you brought us up out of a land flowing with milk and honey. That's Egypt they're referring to, where they were slaves. They are calling that the land of milk and honey. You know, the purpose of being in the wilderness for all that time was to get the Egypt out of them, for the old nature to die. But clearly that hasn't happened. Clearly it was never going to happen. So is it any wonder why they were not allowed to enter into the promised land? That they just didn't believe, you know? Just an unwillingness to let go of the old life. You know? Even though it was bad, there were still some parts of it that they liked, you know, that they found comfort in. So much so that they would rather hold on to that than believe that God's way is better. Oh, I am preaching to myself when I say these words too. Yeah. Oh, thank you, God, for your message. All right. Will you put out the eyes of these men who will not come up? Then Moses was very angry and said to the Lord, do not respect their offering. I have not taken one donkey from them, nor have I hurt any of them. And Moses said to Korah, tomorrow you and your company will be present before the Lord, you and they, as well as Aaron. Let us take his censer and put incense on it, and each of you bring his censer before the Lord, 250 censers, both you and Aaron, each with his censer. So every man took his censer, put fire in it, laid incense on it, and stood at the door of the tabernacle of meeting with Moses and Aaron. And Korah gathered all the congregation against them at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the glory of the Lord appeared to the congregation. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. Then they fell on their faces and said, O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin, and you be angry with the whole congregation? So the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the congregation, saying, get away from the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. You know? See what happens there? Moses intervened, and God responded. 25. Then Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, depart now from the tents of these wicked men. Touch nothing of theirs, lest you be consumed in all their sins. So they got away from all the tents of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram, and Dathan came out and stood at the door of their tents with their wives, their sons, and their little children. And Moses said, by this you shall know that the Lord has sent me to do all these works, for I have not done them of my own will. If these men die naturally like all men, or if they are visited by the common fate of all men, then the Lord has not sent me. But if the Lord creates a new thing, and the earth opens up its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the pit, then you will understand that these men have rejected God. You know, verse 30 says, Lord creates a new thing. You know, so often when we say God is doing a brand new thing, we think it's a good thing. It can be, but sometimes a new thing, like in this case, it can be a pretty bad thing. Okay. Now it came to pass, as he finished speaking all these words, that the ground split apart under them, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households, all the men with Korah, and all their goods. So they and all those with them went down alive into the pit. The earth closed over them, and they perished from among the assembly. Then all Israel who were around them fled at their cry, for they said, "Lest the earth swallows us up also." You know, being cast down alive into the pit. In the book of Revelation, the beast and the false prophet are also going to be cast alive into the pit, where they're tormented day and night. Foreshadowing here. Total foreshadowing of what will come eventually. 35. And a fire came out from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who were offering incense. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, to pick up the censers out of the blaze, for they are holy, and scatter the fire some distance away. The censers of these men who sinned against their own souls, let them be made into hammered plates as a covering for the altar, because they present them before the Lord. Therefore they are holy, and they shall be a sign to the children of Israel." So Eleazar the priest took the bronze censers, which those who were burned up had presented, and they were hammered out as a covering on the altar, to be a memorial to the children of Israel, that no outsider who was not a descendant of Aaron should come near to offer incense before the Lord, that he might not become like Korah and his companions, just as the Lord had said to him through Moses. All right. Again, complaining, grumbling. We really got to take heart at the source of what it ultimately comes from. And rebellion, ultimately comes from a heart of rebellion. It may not seem like it, but we're clearly seeing. You rise up against the leadership that God has appointed, you're also rising up against him. We cannot just be in question about whether or not so-and-so is not doing a good enough job as a leader, or you think you should be leader. It's not for us to say. It's up to God. All right, well, that concludes this episode. We'll be continuing on in chapter 16 next time. Until then, God bless you all.